Okay, the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Oneonta, May 2nd, just about 7 o'clock. Call to order. Call the roll.
Mayor Brennan.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Riesberger.
Here.
Councilmember LaParshu.
Here.
Councilmember Carson.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Rafter. Councilmember Falco.
Here.
If you join me, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we start, many of us saw in the Daily Star this morning an article, front page, 3 Army aviators were killed in a helicopter crash while returning from a training mission in Alaska. And among those who died was Chief Warrant Officer 3rd Class Christopher Robert Aramo of Oneonta. And I would ask you all to please join me for a moment of silence in his memory and the others whose lives ended so abruptly. Thank you. All right. Moving on to happier things. Before we get into our petitioner's piece, I'd like to ask the folks that are here from the Gathering Place to provide us with a bit of an update on what you guys have been up to.
Kim, our executive director, has a PowerPoint to show
Which
you.
is actually in all your folders too, so it's up to you if you want to follow it there or. I wanted to thank you all for letting me come tonight. Both of these people are our great advisory board. We have Ed, and you want to give them a little bit of quick background? Or they know you? They probably know you.
We know it.
Yes.
Probably do.
How about Barbara?
I'm Barbara Hinckley. I live in the town. I was a teacher and a counselor and an administrator and a director of education at some private schools, and I'm since retired. I had the privilege of spending the winter with my grandkids and great-grandkids outside of Dallas, Texas, and I attended 3 senior centers all winter. And it was a new experience for me. I had no idea what a senior center was or what it could be. And I was telling all my friends when I called home what a wonderful time I was having. And one of them called the Office of the Aging and talked to Tammy and said, "My friends are having too much fun. How come we don't have one?" And she said, "Well, it's a funny thing, but we're trying to get one started right now." She asked if she'd like to be on the advisory board. She said, "No, I'm too busy, but I know somebody who would." So that's how I got on the board. I just got back a couple weeks ago. And it's a labor of love. I was so impressed with the senior centers I visited. I have never met so many people and gotten so close to so many people in such a short time as I did in that place. And it is the model. And I know Tammy's running the same kind of place here from everything I've learned so far. So I'm very excited.
That's great.
And I'm Kim Wachowski. I'm the executive director of the Schoharie County Council of Senior Citizens, but it's a complete not-for-profit, as well as the Gathering Place, which we opened in June of 2021. We started with, I was just hoping for like 200 members. I thought if we could just get this off the ground, 200 members, that'd be great. I had 200 members the first day. So it has blown away. And we are now up to about 900 people. And I've already got a list of about 100 people from the Oneonta or Otsego area that's already on the list for the new place. And we haven't even opened yet. All right, let's see if I can. All right. So, how and why was the Gathering Place started? And I will try not to read this to you. Basically, it was the board of directors and I went to them. I had visited. This was pre-COVID. Let me give you a quick background of me. My grandmother helped to start a senior center I'm originally from Storrs, Connecticut, and she helped to start a senior center down there that is still running today. I used to go with her in the 70s, and she just loved it. I saw how much fun everybody was having. And then my mom ended up taking over doing senior trips, so I would help her with that and do name badges and everything. I got to go on some of the senior trips with them. So I've been around the aging population most of my life, all of my life really. So it was something that had always been in the back of my mind. I have worked for many not-for-profits. I started with Leaf. When I first moved up here, it was like 2001, 2002. I worked very closely with Betty Courier, who I have utmost respect, amazing woman. And then I worked for Wildwood School in Schenectady, and then came back to the Community Action Program in Schoharie. And that was the first time I really understood the community that I was living in. Because you know, when you're not there a lot, and you just kind of leave and go to work and come home, you don't realize all the stuff that actually is happening in your community. The amount of homelessness, the amount of poverty and everything that's right there in your back door. I think with these rural towns, what happens a lot of times is you don't see it, because you don't see them on the streets. You don't see them, you know, they're people that are, you know, in a building somewhere or something. So that was my first introduction and seeing with all the things, and along with seeing the amount of there was not a lot going on for seniors in the area at all. We have an office for the aging. It is not as Tammy down here is just amazing. She's an amazing director. So you guys are very fortunate to have her. Ours is a little questionable, but they basically were sticking more to, like, you know, the HEAP, the VITA, those type of things. And there just was no place for any of our seniors to go. So we started talking. I had gone up to Saratoga Senior Center and kind of took a quick tour of their area, and they had a model that was kind of like this one. It was like basically they had classrooms. They had a computer lab, they had an art studio, they had that type of thing. They've been in business for probably, I think, like 9 years. I think Lois Celeste is the executive director up there. So it was kind of neat watching it and everything. It was right in the middle of Saratoga, and the one thing is, though, with Saratoga, even though Saratoga may have more money per se, they are very set up very much like a lot of us down here, because they're county along. You have the city, which is kind of like what you guys have. You have the city, but then all the outskirts are so rural, and it's still, you're still looking at transportation issues. You're still looking at, people that are just isolated. So by bringing something around that people can all come to is really what the key is. So we originally started looking for a building. There was, I don't know if any of you that head up that way, there used to be the Caverns restaurant that was right there. It was really cool because they had like teeth in the, like a cave kind of thing. Had a nice bar. I like that. No, but the gentleman that had it wanted like $1 million for it. So that was way past our budget. And then we happened to see the building where we currently are in. I did a search like that weekend, and it just came up, and it was very reasonably priced. There had been nobody in it. It was a Morton building, and as soon as I looked at it, and then I got convinced the board to come and look at it, it was like, I think this could work. And since then, we have had to add on already twice because we outgrew the building. This building is now, by the time we're done with the second edition, which has been, the second edition is about the entire size of the original building that we've now gone up to the side. We had 1.27 acres, and we just gained because we need more parking, so we just had to buy we had donated to us a little parcel of land to cover the parking issue and stuff. But it's now it's a little bit, we're almost 2 acres of land, and but it's a busy place. So what's the process to open a center? That was when we first went there. You can kind of see the rusty door, the whole thing. We first did a survey. It went out in June of 2020. It basically was a bunch of questions that we came up with, one of the things that you have to do, especially with this population, and especially where we all live, you cannot depend on electronic things. You have to, they need tangible things in your hand, and that's what people are going to pay attention to. That's what we did. We sent it out with our local paper. as an insert, and surprisingly enough, we actually received 600 responses, which may not seem like a lot, but for the Superior County to respond to anything, that was pretty good. And out of all those, we got 92% that wanted to see a senior center. That was all we needed. We didn't need to do feasibility studies, we didn't need to do any of that, basically just ask the question, and we got our answer. So that's where that started. So that was the building when we first opened. Basically, this is just a timeline of kind of what happened. So the first, December of 2020, we did our first ever year-end funding drive, and that was before we opened. And we raised over $8,000 just from local people who wanted to see it open. That was our ribbon cutting ceremony, and it was just a really, really great. This was the original board, along with the mayor of Cobleskill and the supervisor at the time, Leo McAllister. And now what our next steps are. There's some of our peeps. They have such fun. The bottom photograph there is line dancing. They love line dancing up there. We have lots of exercise classes, movement classes, arts and crafts. It's really all about keeping people busy, keep people thinking. One of the things with Alzheimer's and with some of the aging diseases that come along is that if you stop using your brain, that starts to kind of freeze it. It starts to kind of start running into these other problems. And with COVID, the socialization piece was so bad. It was so impactful, especially to this age group. And so to see everybody come back and to be people, and then to watch people that may have not seen each other for like 40 years, and all of a sudden they now see each other, it is just amazing. Every single day we have people that walk in and they're just so happy. When we say we're a family, we're a family. Because every single one of them, you go up to our center and every single one of those members would have no problem showing you around and telling you how great it is. They absolutely love it. And they love to party. They do love to party, I have to say. Just a little quote. So basically, just to give a quick background on us, the Senior Council, we have been around 50, this is our 51st year. We employ all the bus drivers, Medicaid drivers, office staff for the Department of Transportation, the meal drivers, meal site managers, and some of the office staff for the Office for the Aging, all through us. And so right now we have 49 full-time and part-time employees. All of them are seniors. All of them are at least over 50. Which is another point of what we try to do. We have people that come from all over. Otsego, obviously we agree, Montgomery. We have people from Albany that come out to our center. With everything that they've got to offer there, they come out to us. And it's been really, really great. And so what do we do there? Well, we provide lots of programming, resources, meeting space. We also do that as far as the community goes as well, which I understand down here can be a little bit of a challenge, is finding meeting space sometimes. So that's one thing that's part of the community part of our name, is to use that. We also, we do all kinds of different things. We do arts, we have like the rec room or a multi-purpose room, which is for exercises. Now, don't get us confused with a gym, and that's why we've been partnering, we've been working with the Y and things like that, but we are not a gym, and we don't want to be. It's more about movement and exercise, yoga, mental health, all the things. We have basically a Healthy for Life wellness program is what we call it, and it encompasses everything there is to do. That also includes support groups. We have grief support groups. We have Parkinson's support groups, Alzheimer's support groups. We have a mental health support group. You name it, we got it. If there's something that we don't have, we will make it happen, especially if it's something that our members want. Kind of going around with the same thing. So basically we have a computer lab, we use free internet, we have computer access, because that was one of the things with COVID, as you all know, is all of a sudden everybody was forcing people to use a computer that a lot of people never even knew how to do that. And you had to sign up for the shots or whatever. So that was one of the things where I'm like, no, people needed to be empowered. They need to not feel like they can't do this stuff. and that's what we do. We also have tech assistants, we have cell phone classes, because that can get very challenging sometimes for our groups. And we do, we have our day trips, our bus trips, our multi-day trips. And we have, oh God, we have the pool table. Pool table's got a lot of use now. So we've got a good group of gentlemen that actually have been coming for that. And then we try to do a lot of music, entertainment, things, just everything that we can for everything. We do hikes, you know, if people want to. And again, it's all what, everybody joins the gathering place for different reasons. Some people do it so they come every single day. Some do it just for the trips, some do it just for some of our activities. That's the whole thing, is that they can, at any given time, can do whichever. And again, we have things like ballroom dancing and West Coast swing, which Linda Leverock from down here in Oneonta, she teaches. And then again, we have the silver sneakers. We have all you guys. This is the lower corner one there. That's our evening class, because they don't admit their seniors. They're 50 and above. And then again, we do all kinds. We've had a music series that was in our first year that we were open, but we also have the grab and go meals, which is a little different than what the meal centers are now. We piloted the program for the Schoharie, and it's been working great, because it's probably done better than any of the meal sites ever did, because they can either eat there or they can take it home with them. It's really worked. Like, we have a magic show, we have a comedy show coming up next Friday, actually, again. And again, they like to party. Some of our trips, of course, the Silver Birches, that was just 2 weeks ago. That's Harold is in the picture with this, one of the performers. Just since we've opened, we have a wonderful system. It's called My Senior Center. It keeps all of our stats. It has everything and everything. It tells us who lives alone. It tells us where people are coming from, their background. We can even get into the ethnicity and all that kind of stuff if we need to. But we've provided almost basically just about 50,000 hours of activity for members just since we've opened. And again, we're open 6 days a week. And our cost for membership is only $25 for the year. Basically breaks down to $209 a month. And then some of our classes, as you'll see, they're like $5. We try to keep everything very, very low. And we have scholarships if people can't afford things. And so basically, these two pictures obviously are building up in Cobleskill. These two are the potential building, hopefully, for us now. And you can see how Bassett did such a nice job inside. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. And again, and that's basically what we want to do, is replicate what we did up in Cobleskill down to here. And I think with both the Otsego County and Delaware County, I think it'll be definitely successful. And again, I just put in some things basically for, which you guys probably already know, as your Otsego stats too. Which, that's one of the things with any of our rural areas out this way is the senior population is making up the majority of our pretty much the majority of our people in each of the counties and stuff. Because a lot of our young people don't stay. They want to go and live in cities or whatever. They just don't want to be really Big Bend, I guess. So we're excited. We hope that you guys will be excited and support us. And that's Norma. Norma comes all the time. I don't know if you have any questions?
Well, thank you. Council, have you got questions or comments for our speakers?
I just want to say, like, I can tell how connected you are with all the individuals that you serve, just when I think about them, and that's really beautiful. And I'm really excited about this. I'm sure everyone is. It's such a great investment in our community, and the buzz is really great. Everyone who hears about it is excited about it, so just thank you for bringing this to our area.
Thank you. And like again, it's the difference it'll make in people. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yep.
Councilman Murphy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it really does. My grandmother's been a member of her seniors club in Montgomery County.
Mm-hmm.
She'd kill me for saying it's probably close to 40 years now.
Yes.
And it just, the activity, it's life-changing. It really does, especially with folks with dementia. It's been a lifesaver for our family as well, so we're really excited to have you folks.
Thank you so much.
Other comments or questions from council? I just want to say, from the perspective of someone who became quite unexpectedly a senior in these last few years, how wonderful it is that you're doing this and how much I personally appreciate it. I know any number of my friends and neighbors, and they'll be among your first folks in the door, so thank you so much for what
Thank
you're
you so much. Thank you.
And with that, we're going to move on to the public hearing prior to our going to our petitioners. And there is a public hearing before the mayor to receive comments on proposed revisions to section C-15 and C-16 of the Oneonta City Charter. This local law was laid on March 21st, 2023, and approved by the Common Council on April 4th, 2023. Do we have anyone here to speak to this? Seeing no one, I will say that we will close that and move on to our petitioners. And I am going to guess that we have at least one petitioner.
Okay. I am back before the council tonight because my questions in regards to the parking garage have not been answered. Since this is the case, I will reiterate my original questions and ask a few more. I would like answers to these questions within the next 2 weeks, please, and they are not irrelevant questions to this process and should be answered before going forward with your project. The original questions are, was there a feasibility study done taking into account the specific economic and cultural needs of our area? I believe they just showed that that is very possible to do. When is the public forum scheduled for? The meeting I attended with the ad hoc committee was not for the public. It was by invite only. And what are the specific benefits to the community and businesses in regards to the proposed plan? Okay, we'll move on to the new ones. Have the council members offered to have town hall meetings with any of their constituents? I believe most residents do not realize the amount of increase this will create in their taxes, along with many other changes to their homes, our area. Has Foothills been contacted and their needs assessed? Number 5, where can I obtain a copy of the study done on the need for less parking? Do I need to file a FOIL when I ask for things like that, or freedom of information?
Yeah.
Do I need that, or can I just ask that question and receive the answer?
I think the latter. I don't know that there's a requirement that you need to go through a FOIA. We'll take your questions as
Okay.
we are compiling questions and answers here.
Okay, how much money is estimated will be brought in by metered parking and permits, and where are these figures coming from? Mark said at the end of one of the last meetings that it would be a good time to find out how this third floor closure would affect the businesses. The experiment can be over now. As I can tell you, in 3 short weeks, foot traffic is reduced, and I have had a significant decrease in sales compared to the last several years at the same time. It has also come to my attention that there is a sentiment with most board members that this project is moving forward regardless of community engagement or desire. This being from a board member who claimed their constituents were not interested in this. Though this was shared verbally, I believe we are seeing its truth in action. There's been a lack of responsiveness to questions and a lack of community engagement. I trust that this board will take their mission to heart and engage and listen to the community before there is no turning back. I have been waiting several months for answers to the first 3 questions. I look forward to a response within the next 2 weeks to my updated question list. Thank you. And I have some copies. I need mine, okay. Would you like one? And anybody else?
Thank you very much, and with that,
Sure.
if there are any others in the gallery that have anything in our petitioner section? We do not. Then we'll move forward to our boards and commission reports, and we'll go to Councilmember Wisberger for a report on the planning commission.
Yes, thank you. The planning commission met on April 19th. Commissioner Pardo had to resign due to conflict with teaching obligations. I'm assuming you were notified about that. And there were not many items on the agenda. We had a review, a planning commission review of 189 Main Street. And the planning commission, as I said in previous meetings, was required to review the variance. This is the variance for the digital sign that was put on 189 Main before the ZBA reviews it, which was supposed to be on April 26th, but has since been canceled. The motion was made to table the topic so the applicant could come to the meeting and answer questions, but that was not seconded. In the future, the planning commission is going to do is invite applicants to the meeting directly when it is something of this nature. Then there was a history of the applicant's sign installation that was provided by the code office. And so then after that, the chair of the planning commission reviewed what the job of the planning commission was at this point, which is to determine the impact of the variance on the zoning district and how will it allow for future regulation of signage. The LED signs don't follow our DRI plans or the comprehensive plan, and issuing a variance calls into question the signage portion of our code and in the comprehensive plan. The impacts, they both impact intent. So they offered 3 opinions. Opinion 1 is the concern isn't about the sign itself, but that it offers the option to other business owners as a non-binding precedent. Some members don't think other business owners will install this type of sign for now because of the cost. Others worry it will lead to gradual change that impacts our historic downtown. The second opinion, the other concern is someone installing a sign without a permit or variance and then coming to obtain the permit or variance. And opinion 3, the applicant has 2 previously granted area variances for signs in downtown, and a 3rd area variance will degrade the city's ability to regulate signage in downtown under the MU1 form-based code. So the planning commission feels the signage doesn't follow the standards in the MU1 form-based code or in our comprehensive plan, and they sent their opinion to the chair of the ZBA. This was voted on, and the vote was a 4-to-1 vote in favor of sending this opinion to the chair. The second item was a discussion on the U-zone amendments, and it was specifically the seeker. It was classified as a type 1 action. They were reminded that the county has issued their statement of no objection to the U-zone change. The planning commission declared their intent to be lead agency, but they wanted to reach out to the DEC and SHPO to see if they had any objections to that. And the plan is to proceed with the discussion and a full seeker review on May 23rd. And that was it.
Any questions, any comments on the planning commission meeting?
Can I ask a question actually about the sign? If this is something that the owner would be required to remediate, then they would be sort of compelled to comply with the MU1 code, or could they go back to a sign of the previous dimensions, the lighted sign?
From what I was told, if they had put in a sign that was of the exact same digital signage that was on there before, they wouldn't have needed a permit. It was a replacement of the same thing. But in the end, I mean, the planning commission gave their opinion on how this impacts our comprehensive plan and the current code. The decision is going to come down to the ZBA.
Oh, okay.
So.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you very much, Dave. And we'll move on to Councilmember Pari Shu and the Parks and Recreation report.
Cool. So Parks met yesterday, as always. It was a full topic. We pack a lot in to an hour and 15 minutes. So we had 3 petitioners, 2 were in person, one was Lynn Sessions representing the Rotary. They have been approved by the Parks and Rec Commission to hold an event on October 15th. It's a road rally, which is basically a scavenger hunt. It's something that they've done previously. She kind of went into the detail of the event, but it sounds really fun. They're going to use Damaski as sort of like a base camp, so they'll be there from 11:30 to 4:30. So participants will check in, then go kind of do the scavenger hunt, and then come back. There are prizes, as well as Rotary will award mini grants to local charities. Gary Lang from the Outlaws has been contacted about this, and he's supportive. He also offered to open a concession stand, and there's no conflict with any other, previously held event. We also had John Zernecki from Hartwick Softball. So Hartwick is bringing back softball, which is great. It's going to be a club sport in the fall of 23, or starting, next year, and then a varsity sport the year after. They are requesting the use of Field 4. Thank you. For their use for that sport. It's pretty heavy use in next year. It's only 2 to 3 times per week, and probably very few games. But the year after that, it would be practice practically every day, and then also games in the fall and then in the spring. The big topic of conversation was the state of that field. Hartwick would like to partner with the city. There are some things that need to be done, so the field needs to be leveled, and then there are some changes that need to be made to meet NCAA standards. There are also some things that could be upgraded, but they are willing to partner both in effort and financially in order to make those changes. Let's see, there are very few potential conflicts, and Parks Administrator Lansing has a plan to be able to accommodate all users, and basically there will be a contract forthcoming for us to take a look at. Steve Pinner is a new user. This person has requested the use of Field 6 for 2 college level baseball games this Saturday. This was approved pending the certificate of insurance, which has not yet been provided. All the participants are out of town, so we had very little information on this. There was some correspondence regarding the paint on the bandstand. Staff was actually going to complete that. We've decided, I guess, that is the most efficient way to get that done. So there will be some neutral paint done for the back of the performance stage. There was some discussion about sidewalks in Neowa Park, which is, as we know, on the master plan, but not budgeted. And Lou had asked about adding a bike path, at least, in Neowa Park. So there would be kind of like a portion of the road that's set aside for bikes and pedestrians, but the road is too narrow in order to accommodate that. There was also a complaint about the tree and brush removal on the mill race. The reason why that was done is mostly for safety and accessibility and ease of maintenance. All the restrooms and pavilions in the parks are open for the season. More softball. There's a women's softball league that's in the summer, begins May 31st, Monday and Wednesday from 6:15. It'll run until August 9th. It's 8 teams taking up 4 fields. Girls on the Run will be June 4th. That's the first road race to be completely in the park using the new 5K race route. There is a small portion of that. I think that this has been discussed in committee that is grass, so it's not fully accessible. And so I think that we have maybe begun to talk about paving that small portion of the route. Basketball in Louver Park, brief conversation. This year, I believe we are looking at resurfacing the upper court and reusing the backboards and nets from the lower court. Council and Parks need to decide what will be done with the lower court at that point. The skate park is kind of stalled. Ideally, it needs to just be resurfaced or repaved. apparently there's about $5,000 budgeted in the parks budget. Like, this is real money that could be spent, but it's not really enough to do what needs to be done. We did have it on our ARPA spending plan, but who knows where that will go. There will be 2 family movie nights this year, June 29th and August 31st, partnering with Destination Oneonta. The pool opens June 28th and remains open until August 20th. Same hours as last year, 1 to 5 open swim, 5 to 7 family swim. We talked briefly about summer childcare in the city. The YMCA will not be proposing its program that it's been offering in the past because the Oneonta Boys and Girls Club is offering a free program to 120 kids per week, age 6 to 16 in our community. That runs from June 26th to August 25th. They're offering free lunch, and also Catholic Charities is offering free lunch in the park again this year, so that says a lot for, or does a lot for childhood food insecurity, so that's great. There is more to come from the YMCA, but we don't have that information yet with regard to what they're doing this summer. There were a couple questions about Wilbur Park. So some of the equipment at the playground needed repair, so we got some updates on that. And then also we talked about the Little Free Library and Appleball Gardens, which had been taken down for the winter. Lou would like to thank the council for our reconsideration and being able to make the additional restrooms in the park happen this year for our big users. We'll be hosting 10 restrooms for the season. So that's it.
Another 10-minute meeting for the Parks and Rec.
Yeah, it was a quickie.
So-
No, hour 15. It's just like, it's all good all the time.
So I know, Councilman Davies,
Yeah, please.
Thank you. So the timeline of resurfacing Wilbur basketball, I've already received emails about that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. Summer is what I got, but
If
I don't
we're
have
doing-
more specifics on it than that. I don't
Okay.
think you guys would looking into that in the summer, depending on contractor availability.
Sooner than later would make my life very
Mhm.
nice.
yeah.
So Katie's point about, I think you said the council is going to decide what are we doing with the lower court. Let me take the hoops out, put nothing there, so I think that's still a conversation we have in the meantime. Pickleball's been mentioned, the neighbors say they love that. They didn't have a problem with the sound, although I understand that's a problem in other communities, so it's, I think there's still a discussion for that.
Yeah.
Well, I think back when we were looking at this, I don't even know how many years ago, people had proposed some different things like hopscotch or things like that. I think we should look into that. If we really want to make it a family play space, I think we need to create play opportunities and those things. So.
I think.
I was wondering, I'm sorry.
Before you, maybe the same thing. I talked with, I actually was at a couple of the elementary schools in the last couple of days, and I'll be heading back and maybe connecting with you, Dave, over at Riverside, to bring the kids outside and have them tell us what it is that they like to do on a pavement, and see if we can kind of replicate that, Dave.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up, because I think I'm in all 3 buildings, and I think they all are very unique over there, but the one that shows, to me, the most of what the kids enjoy doing on pavement is at Valley View, because they've got games out there that I would have thought were just old games that kids didn't play anymore, and every time I walk out there, there's at least 20 or 30 that's what they're doing, are these games out there, and I think if we're gonna have that family place area, I think what they do at Valley View works.
Should be driven by the kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Katie.
What I was actually wondering, one of the things that was requested on the Wilbur Park survey was to bring back the hitting wall. And I wasn't sure if that might be an appropriate place for that, since it's already a tennis surface, if there was a way for us to get a wall there, and that could be like a practice area for tennis. Just throwing that out. Okay, thanks everyone.
I'm just trying to visualize where you.
So Katie, the Girls on the Run was June what?
June 4th.
Start time?
I don't have it, sorry.
And the YMCA, they're not providing the the summer program, how does that affect the pool?
Pool is the same.
Because they provide the lifeguards, correct?
Correct. Yep. Pool is the same as it has been. They're able to do that.
Further questions or comments from anyone? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, Councilmember Shu. And we'll move on to Councilmember Harrington and the Charter Review Committee report.
Sorry, I was just trying to see it
That's all right.
in my calendar. Girls Around the Run wasn't there since my daughter's doing it. But it's not, it just says all day. So we met at 6 o'clock on Thursday, April 20th. All members were present at this one. Our topics were, the first one was term limits. We talked about term limits for committees and commissions that we have. We try to come up with what's a reasonable time to be off before reappointment, what criteria should have to be met for reappointment if you did run into a problem, trying to find somebody for certain boards and commissions, importance of boards and commissions. We came up with a little bit of verbiage. We sent it to our city attorney for his review. We're waiting for that to come back for our next meeting, to see if it's something that's doable, not doable, if we made things a lot worse, or if we made it better. That's the slow part of doing this, is what else did we, down the road, if we did this, did we not see, and what did we may have made worse or better. The other thing we just started to discuss was a streamlining and hiring process of certain level positions within the city to try to be more competitive and be able to get people to start quicker, and where we should draw a line or not draw a line. And that's just, we're just preliminary discussing that. It's a heavier topic. It's one that really needs due caution. So hopefully we'll have that in the next couple meetings, streamlined hiring process ready to go, and given who with the authority. We're trying to give the authority. The intention is on the streamline is give the authority to the city administrator after the department heads, if it's a budgeted position, to let them go ahead, or working with the department heads when they hire, if it's budgeted, to go ahead and give the authority that they can go ahead and make that offer of employment and go ahead and go with it, and that they will just inform us that they did hire somebody. We adjourned after that, and we meet again, I believe, on the 22nd of this month at 6 p.m.
Questions or comments from council? I'll just say, you're making a mark. I'm looking at something at the top of our agenda that was your work, so there's something.
It's slow, but we're gonna get there. We're not gonna make your deadline, but I think we're making the positive progress.
And the change that was made, that was approved, that is now our law, is gonna make us more nimble, so kudos.
And we're trying to keep with the original intent of how the charter was passed, and that's, we keep going back to when they passed this, what was their intent of doing this?
Right.
So,
With that, if there are no more questions or comments, I'm gonna move, is that a question? Yeah,
Just
okay.
a comment, if you wanna know original intent, you can always contact me, because I haven't been reached out to about the original intent from the Charter Commission. So, let me know if you have any questions.
In fact, do you guys have the membership of the folks that worked on that charter review those years ago that Dave, you were part of? Is that probably
Dave.
No, Dave was not part of that.
well, I do know he was consultant on some of the stuff.
So he was not part of the commission.
Right.
And at the time, we contacted him occasionally.
Mhm.
I think that's fair to say.
Might be good to have that,
Yep.
the knowledge base there.
Yep.
So moving on, speaking of knowledge bases, Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee, Councilman Risberger.
Yes, thank you. We met on April 24th, full agenda. The big one is deer management. Let's see here, the Deer Management Task Force met with DEC. Again, the change, according to the chair, the changes they suggested were more verbiage. Let's see, according to the DEC, a culling program is probably going to be the most effective. They felt that the proposal was sound, but was not providing any particular proposal. Wait, I'm getting conflicting for the information that I wrote down here. What they wanted, the DEC wants to make sure that the city has tried more than just a culling program. And there's some things that the city has done, but to my knowledge, we haven't documented anything in particular that has been done or recommended. The Deer Management Task Force believes that we need to go to either a culling program or deer management assistance program, which is something that's recommended. It's a permit process done through the DEC. But we've also got to enact a plan that shows that we've tried other efforts first. And we need to have documentation that shows that we've tried other things, such as education of the community. This coming August is when permits are applied for from the DEC for the Deer Management Assistance Program. The task force will confirm, and since then they sent out information to members of our committee. Let's see here. The committee is planning to review the final proposal from the Deer Management Task Force, compile questions sent to me. I will send them to Mr. Merzig. And let's see here. We also recommended, the committee itself, our committee, recommended possibly starting by allowing deer hunting on the city property if and when we decide to do that. But work on special permit information first, which is the Deer Management Assistance Program. And simultaneously participate in an education program with that program. Now, if the city decides to go with this program, the DMAP, the Deer Management Program, we also need to have a separate program in place to document that that program is working. And so I think whatever our committee comes up with and recommends, then pushes forward to the council and we decide what we want to do, I think there's still an awful lot of work going forward. I think our original plan was to have something in place in time to obtain that permit this year. My own opinion is, after reading through everything, I'm not sure that we're going to make those deadlines. But that's something that we can discuss in committee the next time we get together. The next item that we talked about was the honorary street naming policy. We made changes to the proposed ordinance. It was approved by the committee, and I have down here that we sent it forward to the council, but it's not on the agenda tonight, so I'm assuming it'll be on the next council agenda.
Wasn't enough time for it to be laid and voted on.
Okay, that's what I thought. So hopefully, the next meeting, it'll be forward. Greg brought forward an adjusted Neola Park 5K race course, which is something that was just talked about. And the course was reversed from what it originally was to prevent bottlenecking coming off the one section of the park. Let's see, as far as, what we talked about, I think it's 2 different sections in the park that would still have to be paved in order to be fully accessible. And it's going to cost approximately $45,000 if the paving is done in-house. We're discussing possibly using ARPA funds to do the new pavement, but before that is moved to finance, there's still a question of whether or not wheelchair racers can make the turns, because there's an awful lot of sharp turns within this course. So we need to talk with the organizers of racers first. Greg was planning on reaching out to the organizers of the Hot Cocoa 5K first. If they didn't have any answers, there's other options such as the Utica USATF and also the Wounded Warriors group. They might be able to give us some guidance. Main Street closures for events, guidelines for approval, which is on the agenda tonight. We'll be some of the things that were talked about were needing a 10-foot clear path for emergency vehicles, and this will be a policy for all events. And we'll be discussing this in just a little bit. Traffic speeds on 3 different streets of the city were discussed. And these were complaints on State Street, Hazel Street, and also Spruce Street due to speeding. And these were traffic studies. So the traffic study that was done on State Street and Hazel Street first, when they calculated the speeds that were going through, the 85th percentile were speeds 19 to 23 miles an hour, done in the 30-mile-per-hour zone. Let's see here. I don't think I put the maximum that was there on either one of these. There was some speeding that was done in both of these areas that was significantly surprising, I think is easy to say, how fast they were going. So we're looking at various options for slowing traffic, including changing some streets to one-way streets, putting in speed bumps or speed tables. In the State Street area, there's an idea to look at the school's speed zone to see if that can be done up near the normal school, old normal school. So Greg is going to be looking at that. I'm jumping all over the place here. The thought was that changing the speed limit to 25 miles an hour will not have a large impact on the speeders. But what we did agree with is we need a complete streets plan to look at the speeding issue citywide. Partially because if we put deterrents in certain streets, it's going to force traffic into other streets, and we may just end up playing whack-a-mole with the issues. So the staff may be able to work on this, while the occasional consultant may need to be temporarily hired in certain situations. Greg's going to talk with Judy, Chris, and OPD to address it systematically. Okay. Next one was the 2023 Community Events Programming, Marketing, and Promotion. Greg and Judy met with Destination Oneonta. The Main Street closures for the Meet Me on Main Street this last year were thought to be not well attended. It doesn't work unless it's tied with some other events. And May 13th was going to be the first Meet Me on Main Street event, so we're looking to see if they can be placed with the farmers market that day instead. Some of the other things that are coming up is, other events coming up in the future were then discussed. And one thing of note is the city marketing. We're planning to have a city booth at the Cooperstown All-Star Village this year on opening day, which will hopefully give visitors to the city information on where to go within the city. We had 2 other items, trash bin storage and the Wilbur Park master plan, that were tabled because at this point I think we've been here for over 2 hours. So we'll address it next time. Yes?
What was decided, if anything, about traffic on Spruce Street?
At this point, and I didn't say this, the 85th percentile for Spruce Street was actually 28 miles per hour.
I thought it was 38.
It's 28 is what I had. There were, not to say there wasn't speeding. There's definitely speeding. I just didn't write down what the speeding was. But I know on each street, on both Spruce Street and also State Street, Hazel Street area, some of the speeders were very excessive.
63 on Spruce Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was like 45 on the other one.
Yeah, so 63 inside the city limits in a residential neighborhood. I don't disagree that a comprehensive speed study is necessary for the city. I would just, I don't know. It's going to take a long time, and right now there are residents on that street who, so I requested the speed study on behalf of the residents on Spruce Street. The speed study is data that confirms their anecdotes. I don't think that it's fair to ask those residents to wait when, something could be done. We could put in a stop sign and it either helps or it doesn't, but at least we've done something. To have residents say, we have a problem on our street, to have data confirm that there's a problem on the street, and then for us to say, we're not gonna do anything about it until we do a study, is sort of a slap in the face. They've been asking for something to be done in that stretch from, Ford Avenue to Brook Street since well before I was on council. I had had some conversations with the city administrator, with the chief of police, and with the public works director, Christina Capucci, about getting the data and then doing something with it. So to see it stopped in committee was really disappointing.
It wasn't stopped in committee, it was, this is what Greg said he was going to do. Staff is gonna work on a complete streets plan, because there's speeding issues throughout the city. It's not just Spruce Street.
But we have
So-
data that people are going 63 on Spruce Street.
I agree. So what would you like to do? You want to address just Spruce Street? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we have a complaint, we
Okay.
have data that backs up the complaint, that's what the committee was asked to do.
Well, you've got the city manager right there, you've got the chief of police right there. Tell them what you want.
I did do that.
So you want a stop sign?
I think it would be beneficial for the city to, that's a cheap, quick thing that we can do. Whether or not it helps, we can redo the speed study in 6 months and you guys can tell me that didn't work. But at least we did something.
Yeah, I'd like to look into it. Putting in a stop sign or taking one out or something like that requires a traffic study for the laws that are applicable to this. So it
Okay.
would be not wise to just throw it in there and see what happens without a little bit more understanding of what our goals are and what the options are. I mean, you mentioned 60, yes, 60, that's a high speed.
That's
There were-
fast,
there
and
were
people
two.
go that speed on Spruce Street because on Center Street, there's a stop sign at every
Well, it's
block.
actually one car that did that during the speed study.
Okay,
Two.
two.
To be precise.
Okay, two.
But those are definitely outliers by definition. 2 out of however many thousand over the course of the week, 80.
18,234, or 243 vehicles. Out of that, about 10% of them were speeders, which would be defined as anything over 30 miles an hour. So the 2 cars at 60 miles an hour that might have come through there, on a 24-hour scale, if we're looking at 168 hours in a week, for us to be able to legitimately predict when somebody was going through there would be an act of God.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to say, I really appreciate that, you know, you were really responsive when I sent the email about it.
We did 12 hours of overall in-person traffic surveillance with police officers using radar units and came up with 0 speeding infractions. 1 stop sign. So just so you know, it's like these, 24-hour scale is very difficult. Could have been a taxi cab in the middle of the night. Daytime hours, and there's also perspective issues, and we see this a lot. Every year this time we start to see increases in complaints of speeding. Not everybody gauges speed well, and 30 miles an hour on residential streets appears to be a lot faster than it actually is. So you'll have people complaining of speeds, and the speeds fall, and by looking at these, way under 30 miles an hour, an acceptable margin.
Sure. Well, I appreciate, I mean, the speed study is something that's more than what's been done before. And, you know, all of these residents have said to me that they've been complaining for a decade. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the increased patrols. I just think, you know, being presented with data that there's speeding on the street. Again, I know from living in the neighborhood that people use Spruce Street as a cut through because there are no stop signs for 6 blocks, where on Center Street it's stop sign, stop sign, stop sign, you know, school zone, stop sign, you know, and so I think that it's not unrealistic for these residents to say, that seems like a really long stretch, and then have the data back that up, and then for it to say like, well, we're gonna do a comprehensive study, you know, how long is that gonna take? So I guess what I'm hearing you say is that a speed study is necessary before putting in a stop sign, but we have a speed study, so what's next?
Well, it's an engineering study, it's not just the speed study.
Okay.
So
One of the things, like you mentioned, if Center Street has more stop, I'm not sure it does, but if it has more stop signs more frequently, one of the things people think putting stop signs, that's the way to control speed. If you put them in, and if they're not justified, the effect tends to be people are gonna go faster when they beat the stop sign. There are gonna be more infractions rolling through, not actually stopping at the stop sign, whether or not we have time to enforce those, obviously, you know. Living on Center Street, between Church and the next stop sign's at Ford, all the time I hear cars accelerating fast out of Church Street stop sign because there's an open stretch and they're trying to make up that time that they perceive they lost. It's a thing that's been proven with engineering studies over the years, which is why stop signs are typically not the first thing you jump to when there's a speed issue, because it might not help it. It might just, you're gonna create more acceleration.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna change the issue.
If I can just
I'm not saying
mention.
it's not possible to put a stop sign there or that I
Yeah.
recommend it. I just don't wanna jump right to that.
No, I appreciate that, and you have cited that study to me on more than one occasion, that was shared with me by Chris Iacobucci. I read it, I get it, but I think that, while, putting in bump outs and, the, speed tables and things, that may be more effective. Realistically, like, when are we gonna make that happen? Do you know what I mean? Which is why I jumped to a stop sign, even if it's not the most effective thing, it's relatively inexpensive, it can be done relatively quickly, and it's action, right? As opposed to saying like, well, in 40 years when we reconstruct the street, then literally there was a baby born in the fall. That person will be older than me by the time Spruce Street is reconstructed. So I don't want it to seem like I'm just jumping to a stop sign either, but I think, absent of other cost-effective, quick actions, I think giving these residents something to at least attempt to slow the traffic on their street is empathetic, is reasonable.
Can I ask, do we have any of those digital speed check signs that don't have a home right now that may be placed for a short period of time to see if that has some mitigating effect on the perception of speed going through Spruce Street?
The ones we have
Are they all designed
permanently
installed?
My concern with a stop sign there would be an increase in incidence of accidents. So anytime you have a vehicle come to a complete stop, you may have somebody following. The other thing is stopping and turning. I would like to see, if we're gonna consider a stop sign, is to take a deeper dive into what Center Street looks like versus Spruce Street traffic volume and incidence of accidents. I can tell you that, pretty sure, Greg, did I send you back some numbers on the accidents there? I think we had like 3 in the last 4 years or something for that stretch of Spruce Street.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was pretty low.
It was similar to most of the other fields in Church Street last year and some other places where we've had a number of these in the last year and longer than that, but every time we look at these, the average speed or the 85th percentile is below the speed limit. I'd say Spruce Street's a little bit higher than normal, being 28, which is still below 30, but I think when I'm talking about a citywide study, I don't need to study in detail every single street, and it takes a year and a half or 10 years to do, and we do nothing in the meantime. I mean, we have to have a comprehensive strategy. What are we trying to accomplish? Do we think that on streets like Spruce Street, Union Street, Church Street, do we want 25 mile per hour, 85th percentile? Do we want 20? Do we want 15? Do we want 30? And you can then start to prioritize. Like, yeah, we're hearing some people complain on Spruce Street. We've heard people complain on Union Street. We haven't put in a stop sign or done anything, physically different there. But there are still outliers on Union Street and Church Street and Spruce Street. So, I think that's my approach. And what Chris is saying, that makes a lot of sense to me too, is looking at comparing Spruce and Center. If you make a change here, how does it affect over there? And what is our accident history? There may be there is a perception of high speeds on occasion, but is the real effect of that perhaps worse, having more accidents?
And do we then take traffic that's now in existence on Spruce Street and push it to other east to west streets like Center Street, for instance, that may already be at a higher capacity for the roadway? also having a school zone and a lot of residents, do we then end up putting ourselves in a position where we're artificially increasing volume there, which could increase the incidence of accidents or other problems?
So I wanna just
think
follow. Go ahead.
there has to be a closer look at that for sure.
I just want to follow up on the thought that I put out about passive mitigation efforts that a digital sign would present. Any number of places that I'll go, that any number of folks I'm sure go, you'll see in the neighborhood little signs that are put out, these little plastic signs that say, please slow down, children, whatever it may be. Those do have an effect, and that may very well be a way that your constituents may be able to take some proactive measures themselves that may have essentially the same sort of a mitigating effect on some of that speed traffic in the short term.
They may also give them a speed reference too, so they can see how fast the vehicle's going by looking at the car and looking at the sign. So maybe they're not equating a higher speed, and when they see it come through and they see 25 and they thought it was 35, it might change the way that they're looking at it too, I don't know, but that's a really good point.
The question for Greg. Greg, if we're doing, because we've talked in depth about the difference between speed tables and speed bumps and speed humps and all the different things that are out there. If we decide to do this, and I really don't want to do this haphazardly because it's going to affect where traffic ends up going. But if we decide to do that, do we need to actually reconstruct the street? My impression was that we didn't have to. How quickly could they be done if we decide to do those?
If I could jump in here, last I checked, it was illegal to put speed bumps on the, if we own
Humps are different than bumps.
putting things in which intentionally can do damage to a car if it's going the speed limit is illegal.
They do it all over in Rochester, all over downtown.
I'm simply telling you what I last know. If that's wrong, more than happy to
I don't
check.
think that's correct.
We can certainly do it in a public.
Speed bumps, maybe, but we're talking speed humps and tables that are like, what are they, like 5 feet deep?
They're designed to be.
Yeah, they're very different.
At that speed. It's designed for it.
Are they gonna have any negative impact when you're plowing the streets?
No, put it properly.
Cool.
Yeah, they're not like the bumps that we had.
Okay.
So how long would it?
It depends on what you're doing. So like a 6-speed hump, probably that could be done this summer. I mean, that's not like a major thing.
Okay, so we don't have to reconstruct sections of the street then to do this?
Not huge sections. So the speed table, something that's gonna have an impact on drainage, that's a bigger deal. Take a look at that.
Okay.
In some cases, you might have to put in different drainage. Really likes to do that.
Okay.
So it really kind of depends. But there are things that you can do that aren't hugely expensive.
Cool.
Okay.
I would respectfully ask that something be done.
So Len?
So, Chief Witzenberg, are you moving that device ancillary to each one of these streets that we talked about in committee? Meaning, we looked at Spruce, we looked at State. Are you looking at the other side streets because of what you just suggested, that if we do anything on these primary streets, that we might push traffic over? So can we get the studies done as the weeks are going by, to Katie's point? Let's keep doing that if that's the case.
Are you sales pitch now? We're actually discussing trying to get another one, because the way that they work, we only have one, right? And
We talked about this a couple of years ago because of my frustration on Chestnut Street.
right, and it's a great device. The problem is we only have one, and in order for us to get a reasonable data cross section, we have to leave it out between 7 and 10 days. So if we want to do multiple streets, it could take months for us to get through that. So what we would like to do is initially add an additional one in, so that we're able to get maybe 2 streets at a glance at once during the same time period. It would, it's going to increase our capacity by 100%. And it would give engineering and the city administrator a better at a glance. And we can manage that data and getting them put out and collected. But I think we really need to have more of them so that we can get more data at once, so we can do those comparisons real time and run them concurrently instead of consecutively.
What's that price number, Chris?
They're about $4,000.
We have money in the police fund, right?
I have nothing in my budget for that.
No, on that,
Oh, and,
the separate fund.
yeah, that's for, yeah, we have some money there, yeah.
Yes, Mark.
Mark, can I clarify, Len, your comment? You're asking to baseline the streets surrounding the streets in question, so that if we do something, we're able to compare against the baseline. Yeah.
To Chris's point, we'll have real data, and Chris and I, Kate, sounds like Katie's been having conversations with them, I've been doing for the last 3 years, because people on Chestnut Street are very frustrated with the speeds that are being witnessed, and then it was collected. So, yeah, we talked about this last year before, about for $4,000, we can get another machine. Why not get a couple of them, so then we're looking at 3 streets at the same time,
Right.
and then we have real data that we can enjoy piling
Well,
over.
then we can make changes and the study those changes, the impact of those changes later on.
Right. Because to our committee's point, we want to do the right thing, we don't want to push traffic over into any other neighborhood, but without the real data. And I can see where if we had the one machine and then push it over, well, that's a different week. It could have been SUNY graduation week, and the next week they're all gone, so it wouldn't be right, it wouldn't be accurate. So I'd rather get a couple more machines for a low cost.
So, for our next finance committee meeting that's gonna be coming up, can we get price of machines and what account we might be able to take it out of and try to,
I just sent the city administrator a quote, actually.
oh, look at that. You guys are speedy.
David?
Greg, in the meantime, while we're looking at this and perhaps purchasing another machine to get more data, is there any reason why a complete streets plan can't get started on how to, just to get the ball rolling for this?
No, there's no reason I can't
Okay.
get started. Obviously, it just fits in with everything else that's going on. It certainly isn't a new idea in my mind, having a complete streets plan. So I think,
Could call it a complete street speeding plan, I guess, or non-speeding
well,
plan?
I call it complete streets plan, because I look at it more from just
Holistically.
speeding, but, everything. I mean, I think we have traffic signals that are completely unnecessary and do more harm than good that we can look at. It's a matter of prioritizing what we want to look at. And like I alluded to earlier, I think, Chris and I, Chris Yacobucci as well, we're gonna sit down and talk about what is our approach to the citywide speed study, where are we gonna put these? If we get another 1 or 2 more, how are we gonna go about that, map it out in timeframe? I have been looking at some of those intersections, doing some counts, and I think we can just continue the conversation, whether it's in Click or elsewhere. But the first thing for me is, what is our goal? And that has to be specific. Like I was saying before, 20 miles per hour, 85th percentile. That's what, okay, how do we accomplish that? I don't think our goal can be 0 cars, 0 outliers. Making it harder for them to do that is, an effect of putting in a speed hump or a stop sign 80, but you still might have those outliers. You don't think you can eliminate them entirely.
One of the problems with the 85th percentile is it's generally used to increase speeds for roadways because it's defined as the speed at which 85% of the drivers feel confident in driving safely. And the assumption there is that 85% of the drivers are actually law-abiding and try to drive within their skill level, the condition of their vehicle, et cetera, right? So in a lot of cases, if we find that the 85th percentile is 35 miles an hour, the guidance from the NTSB would be consider raising the speed limit, right? So making cars go slower than the 85th percentile is not an easy task.
That's where there's no answer other than physical changes to the roads and make it feel different to the driver so that they tend to perceive that they can go slower. So
There's also sorts of metrics on how much space you have to take away from the roadway to see a 10-mile-an-hour change in traffic. And it's pretty significant and could lead to other complications, but it's, Greg having an engineering background, he's probably got a better grasp of it than I do, but lowering speeds for perceived safe driving is much more difficult than it is raising a speed limit.
Sure.
And are we controlling the lights on Main Street? I noticed a couple of weeks ago we're down to flashing instead of actually,
Yeah, those by 3rd Street and Walling Ave, those were turned into the flash mode related to the construction project, but I've also been observing those for my
So-
ulterior motives of seeing whether they are necessary or not. I've been doing traffic counts and observation of 3rd Street coming out of the hospital. Are there any difficulties? Is anyone having difficulties turning out of there? And I've seen no evidence of that so far, but that's why I continue to collect data and look at that. And we'll do the same thing at Walling and doing the same thing at River and Wilcox, just on the West End. There might be different ways of timing the signals, or maybe they don't need to be there in full phase operation at all.
so we're doing that, city. And we started on Main Street because of the project on Gardner.
While we're on the topic, can I ask a question about West Street, where the town and the city meet? There is one of those, like, you're going too fast speed things, but I think it's in the town. It tells you that you're going too fast if you're going like 35, but then like 20 feet in front of it is a speed limit sign that says speed limit 40. Has anybody else seen that?
I noticed that.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
noticed
but
signs that-
I haven't seen that, but it
Oh,
then goes right down. I mean,
I
then
think
there's
that is in the
another-
town.
Yes,
That
I don't
is
think
in the
that
town.
will, yeah, I
And
think
then our
that's,
speed limit sign
it's
is,
30.
yeah,
it,
right, 30 or 25 right there.
it's 40.
No, the only place that has 40-mile-an-hour speed limit is,
Is in the town?
no, it's, Commercial Drive by the Hampton, as far as I know.
So
That
that
less
portion
highway.
might be in the town, is what I'm saying, that
Right.
portion of West Street. 'cause
If it's
really
above
is-
30 miles an hour, we'll be in the town.
It's in the town? Okay, I'm
Yes.
gonna go out there and be like, what? I just thought I would ask you while we were talking about it, cause it's really wild. Okay, so, I'm sorry, since I brought this up with regard to, Spruce Street, what's the plan? Can we just reiterate that so that I can share it with my constituents?
Plan is to study the issue further at this point, come back to Clay. A month, roughly the end of the month when the meeting is again,
Okay,
discuss.
further discussions in a month. Okay, thank you.
If you have input as to what your goal is,
Mhm.
is it, we don't want a car going over 60 miles an hour? Is it, we don't want a car going over 30 miles an hour? Using extreme
Yeah.
examples, but seriously, what is your goal?
Okay,
Is it we just want fewer speeding cars? Well, how do we define, how do we quantify that? So that
Sure.
when we make whatever changes we do or do not make, and we measure it again after the fact, how do we know we've been successful?
okay,
What would make the neighbors say, okay, we're happy with the way it is?
okay,
If we can get a little bit more feedback to that, and I think that would be helpful,
okay.
and we're gonna continue discussions.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I want to move this forward. I certainly don't want to say, yeah, I'll get you a speed study, and then the speed study confirms what they think, and then we don't do anything. So I appreciate that.
And Greg, part of that comprehensive look that you're gonna make, does that take data from both the police and fire departments and get overlaid with the GIS department to see where within the city the motor vehicle crashes are actually happening?
Depends on how much we dig into the data, but when we look at these, we typically take a look at what's the accident history in the last 3 to 5 years or so.
Well, I only suggest that because I heard you ask Chris, or you suggested there was only like 3 motor vehicle crashes on a particular street after a certain amount of years, and I just think that data would be helpful for the council to look at also.
Yeah, it's not easy, it's labor intensive to do that. All of this that we're talking about is labor intensive, and that's the biggest problem with everything we do. But, we don't have that crash data in a GIS format now, so it'll take some doing to figure out the best way to do that, but yes, we would like to look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe we may have come to the end of comments or questions relative to the click. I appreciate that, and I know the Community Wellness Committee was canceled a few days ago, and forward to the next meeting. All right, with that, we'll move on to the city administrator's report. Great.
Sales tax for February of this year was $527,000, which is about 2.6% or 11,000 more than last year for the same month. Through the first 2 months of 2023, we're about 77,000 ahead of last year. Damaski Field concession stand repairs are substantially complete. River Street project, that's being, that bid will be open later this week, so we'll be talking about that at finance most likely next week. OPT last week had some visitors from New York State DOT to do an inspection related to getting final authority for OPT to continue to operate the Otsego Express route that goes Route 6 to Sydney. They didn't find any violations. It's a great team effort. OPT, Ginny in her office, Central Garage, HR staff all contribute to that. Since taking over the Route 6 from Oneonta to Sydney in June 2020, OPT's high quality and consistent service has contributed to increased ridership, and we'll get some data on this to share. I don't have specific numbers, but I think that'd be interesting to look at in the future. Mainly these are major commuters going between Oneonta and Sydney, so I think we've got a positive effect on that service for the county, which the county pays the city to do. That was it, unless there are any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Greg? All right. All right, well, so this is more for, I've sent an email around to everybody, and I'm sure had an opportunity to look at that. We can change ago relative to questions about a commitment I made for funding. But nonetheless, I did promise a report to you guys and to Teresa and to Vicky, so you're my audience. So with that, I'll tell you that during the first council meeting of November last year, following a months-long process that identified what every department in the city found to be their challenges and their successes, what their funding needs were, and per the council, what their priorities should be, we passed a budget that essentially had us treading water. No new and needed major equipment, no significant increase in staffing, certainly no progress in offering competitive salaries, and we taxed at the height of the tax cap, and we borrowed mightily from our general fund to make ends meet. So this is what I said at that meeting following our budget vote last year. I said, acknowledging the fact that the continuing escalation of costs in healthcare, insurance, fuel, equipment purchase, maintenance, and staffing will require a choice to either cut services or to finance in the short term through our general fund, and that this is not a sustainable course. I would like to inform the council of the following. At the May 2nd meeting, it's now May 2nd, of the Common Council, I will make a presentation that will be the distillation of various strategies and a blueprint for the addition of $1.2 million in new yearly revenues. These revenue streams will be determined through conversation and planning with the city administrator, finance director, as well as with the leadership of our anchor institutions, the county, and the state. It's my hope and expectation that through this effort, we'll find ourselves in a better place during budget discussions next year and into the future. And I had presumed that this process would involve the finance committee too, but to be honest, there hasn't been anything to present you guys with. Nonetheless, the effort has been an ongoing priority for me, as it's been for others. And as I reported to council, in at least one constituent, we have made serious progress. Now, much of this is subject to discretion in my reporting, as there are conversations and negotiations involved, and they need the room to breathe. But in reporting to the community, I can tell you this. Among the greatest impacts on the city's finances are employee benefits, most specifically the cost of our healthcare insurance package. And that holy grail that will help us reduce those costs and the ones that we've been creatively pursuing is membership in an insurance consortium. There's been progress made on that front, but the grail is still out there and elusive. The quest continues, as do my conversations with state and regional officials in solicitation of their assistance. But what you should know and have confidence in is the progress being made every 2 weeks or so by our healthcare task force. Greg Matthijs leads that group. And they are pursuing opportunities to engage in a shared program with lowered costs, while at the same time enhancing opportunities for wellness among our city employees. Now, on another front, there are currently conversations taking place with anchor institutions. And the sensitivity of these discussions doesn't allow me to say much more. However, it is my hope that within 4 to 6 weeks, we will have something of consequence that I can share with council. Another revenue stream that we're making progress identifying will come from the creation of a paid parking strategy. To that end, I've created a parking strategies task force that includes retailers, restaurateurs, landlords, community members, city staff, and elected officials. It too is being guided by our city administrator, which you've got to do. When the detail of the strategy is provided to the committee and council, I believe that we will see a fee structure that supports a dedicated fund for the maintenance of the garage, the oversight of parking adherence, and the inclusion of connective transit for increased ease of access to parked vehicles and our shopping center. And there may be a little left over. I've had conversations with the mayor of a local municipality that has a similar percentage breakdown among taxable and non-taxable properties. That's does Oneonta. And the strategies that they've employed may well be replicable here, although not without resistance. So before such measures are brought to committees and council for consideration, we will be gathering our nonprofits in a summit that provides them with an opportunity to take part in the identification of strategies that serve to attain the same outcomes without imposition of any revenue generator by the city. Additionally, I've negotiated with and gained handshake agreements from our largest downtown landlords for financial support of a BID, a business improvement district. This will have an immediate effect on the city's ability to both police and energize our downtown without the attendant and prohibitive costs. And I have hopes that we will see a BID creation by summer. We've worked very hard in these last several months to foster an unprecedented relationship with the Cooperstown All-Star Village, in which their active direction of baseball families to Oneonta promises to have a palpable effect on the numbers of shoppers and diners and entertainment seekers in our downtown and beyond. This significantly enhanced population of visitors will have an impact on our sales tax collections and on likely investment of entrepreneurs in our remaining empty spaces. The ownership of the Cooperstown All-Star Village has been clear that they expect to be partners in the city's success, and we are taking them up on that. The city has engaged the services of an experienced legal team in the creation and implementation of an LDC, Local Development Corporation. Once established, this 501c3 has the potential to be a conduit for any number of strategies which the city would otherwise be unable to engage in. As an aside, we are in conversations with developers who, if and when committed, will increase both our tax base and the population of those living and shopping in our center city. Lastly, we've been pitching hard to Senator Schumer's office, Governor Hochul, Lieutenant Governor Delgado, and our state representatives for varying assistances, almost all of them financial. I can tell you that our message is absolutely resonating, and I have some confidence that the efforts will bear fruit. Now, 6 months ago, I made a commitment to council and to the community that I'd be creatively strategic in determining an augmentation to our current revenue streams. We cannot run the city on the money that we currently collect. We cannot borrow from our general fund as a practice. It's not sustainable. And we will not be able to maintain our current level of staffing and of services without an increase in funds collected. This is serious. The status quo is not an option. I know everyone in this room understands that. I hope this serves to inform the public and our potential partners of that as well. Of course, all of these funding strategies will ultimately find their way in front of boards and commissions and council, and as a consequence, in front of the public. So stay tuned. And that's my report. And with that, we will move on to our agenda. On the consent agenda, the approval of minutes. Motion that the Common Council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held April 18th, 2023. Motion number 2, that the Common Council approves the warrants totaling $303,193.64, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. Motion number 3, that the Common Council approves the following resolution. Whereas the city has bid 3 times for the purchase of a high-roof van for the city's sanitary sewer and storm sewer camera system, and whereas the city awarded a bid and issued a purchase order in November of 2021 in the amount of $45,316.89, and whereas the first bid was canceled by the vendor due to the manufacturing canceling the order due to production issues. The second bid was rejected due to a long lead delivery. And the third bid received no responses. Now therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to the provisions of the General Municipal Law 103-4, the Common Council declares an emergency condition with regard to protecting the lives, the health, and public property of the Oneonta community due to the inability of the Public Works staff to inspect and troubleshoot sewer main and storm sewer backups, confirm locations of sewer laterals and sanitary sewer main and storm sewer breaks, and that the city administrator be authorized to enter into a contract with McGuire Chrysler Dodge Jeep of Syracuse, New York, in an amount not to exceed $53,000 without the need for the following competitive bidding processes as set forth in New York State law, and be it further resolved that the Common Council authorizes the necessary budget transfers in equal amounts, $2,562 each, from the general water and sewer fund contingency accounts to cover the additional costs over the 2021 purchase order, and be it further resolved, this resolution is effective immediately. That ends the consent portion of the agenda. Do we have anybody who would like anything removed? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? Glenn, followed by David. And with that, discussion. And with that, thank you. And with that,
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Ritzberger?
yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Hutchins?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon?
All right, moving on to the discussion agenda. Motion number 4, that the Common Council approves the purchasing agent's recommendation to award the bid for the timber sale 58 acres to the highest responsive bidder, Prentice and Carlisle Forest Resource Management and Timber Services, Bangor, Maine, in the amount of $181,121, recognizing per contract the city's timber agent, Northeast Timber Services of Walton, New York, receives a 15% commission on the total sales. Do I have a motion to approve? Katie, followed by Lynn, and discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Could, someone just summarize where we are in this process? Thank you. Yeah, Ginny was nodding, so I figured I would just stop my question.
I've got it right here.
Okay, thank you.
Well, as far as, so far, we've grossed, including this award, this would be $436,625 in gross sales, less the commission, that would be a net to the city of $371,000 and change.
I believe there's 2 or 3, don't quote me exactly on how many more timber sales there will be, a few more coming, so the work is not fully complete. I think we're more than halfway. I guess, top of my head, percentage, I don't know exactly.
But we should expect more of these coming, probably around $500,000 in total net to the city by the time we're done, I think.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Luke?
So just, I have 2 quick questions. The first is, has this lumber already been, or timber rather, already been felled or cut rather? And if not, where exactly is it being cut from?
It's being cut, so the hardwood it's cut and then it's sold. The softwood, I think there's a bid initially, and then there's a price agreed to, and then they go and take it. So the numbers that are coming in is for timber that's been felled. It's all in our watershed properties, airport property as well. There's some, so everything that's really in the town of Oneonta, but it's city-owned property, north of the city.
And it's, just a reminder, we're not clear cutting any areas here, it's all selective cut, based on our forester's recommendation.
And that had to, sorry, one more follow-up. That had a lot to do with disease mitigation as well, correct? Like a lot of the timber that was being cut was to mitigate, like Dutch elm, for example.
I would have to ask the forester to give a better answer to that. I mean, I don't know specifically what diseases may be focused on. I know ash trees.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry, the ash.
Definitely, okay. Yeah, with the ash borer in the area, that's one that's being taken
Okay.
while they still can.
Thank you.
Further discussion? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Parsons?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
Okay, motion number 5, that the common council authorizes the city administrator to sign a renewal agreement with Auctions International, Inc. of East Aurora, New York, to provide online auction services for items declared surplus, subject to review by the city attorney. The terms of this contract shall remain in effect until either party terminates said agreement. Do I have a motion to approve? Dave, followed by Katie, I think. And discussion? No discussion? Then we'll take a vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Parsons?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Okay. Moving on to item number 6 for discussion, Main Street closures for events and guidelines for approval. Can we, who is going to take the lead on that? Great.
So we discussed these at the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee. The intent here, there's no council motion before you because we're looking for a formal council adoption of a strict set of rules. As the name implies, these would be guidelines just to help guide our collective selves, staff, as well as the council, as to what is an acceptable event for closing Main Street. Obviously, closing Main Street has an impact on the businesses, has an impact on traffic. Generally speaking, having a larger event that's drawing a lot of people downtown is a good thing. Some businesses might benefit more than others depending on what they're doing and what their feedback may be. But having a small event that shuts down Main Street from Chestnut to Elm that only has 100 people is probably not going to have a major effect or a positive effect on businesses or the city in general. So that was the first thing we talked about, and when I say we, a group of staff were talking about this, and we brought it to the click. So having a minimum expectation of approximately 1,000 persons in attendance or more, I think we thought was a reasonable number to set as a baseline goal. You know, if a new event is coming to Main Street, if they tell us they're gonna have 250 people over the course of the day, that's probably not worth closing Main Street down. If they say they're gonna have 1,000 or more, you know, that's something to talk about, consider. The events that we have now that are ongoing every year seem to meet that threshold. I think it's, as we move further down the list, we've, you know, created a process by which like a new event would come to a council. That's how it's been done in the past. Any second time or third time and so on event would automatically be approved by the clerk's office, provided they gave the proper insurance and application fee and all of that. But we'd like to have at least the second time an event occurs, an annual event, have it come back to the council to get some feedback directly from the event organizer. They should be asked to solicit feedback from downtown businesses, and downtown businesses can come and provide their feedback, of course, at that open meeting. So we get a sense of, did it go as well as we hoped it would? Was it better? Was it worse? Were there problems? Anything that needs to be addressed? And if so, how is that going to be addressed the next time around? So that way the council, you know, has a built-in opportunity the second time around to make sure that this is still an event they support closing the street for. And then after that, we might go ahead, if there are no changes and no other issues come up, just automatically approve it. But of course, at any time, the council can raise a question about an event, opts to not renew their permit, or direct the staff not to renew it. You know, the second bullet, when we talk about positive impact on businesses, we're not being specific in how that would be collected. I think that's something we should continue to have a conversation between the council and the event organizers as to how we want to receive that. You know, Destination Oneonta had done the Meet Me on Main Street closures. They did a survey of business owners and they got 9 responses. That's not great. Maybe there's a way we can, working with the organizers, figure out a better way to get better feedback from more business owners as well as the attendees. Some very obvious things like a full lane closure, minimum 10 foot wide, needs to be cut clear for emergency vehicles. That's always been the case. We were just trying to document some of the things that are minimum requirements for events. Providing all amenities, accommodations, insurance, that includes portable restrooms, whatever else might be necessary for the event. Security, if that's a concern, something like a Sonoma Gang, they have their own security that's there. You know, saying the city will approve approximately 1 event per month, that's intended to, for one, not have Main Street closed all the time. 2, it kind of aligns with what we have now. I think there are 10 events, and I'm including the bigger parades, Memorial Day, for example, that close Main Street throughout the year, and they're pretty much spaced out about 1 per month, and that's reasonable. We can handle that as far as police and fire and DPW. You know, for the most part, they're handling those with volunteers' efforts, you know, coming out overtime, and to ask to continue to add. If you had an event, a street closure every weekend, I think it'd be a real burden on police and DPW to ask them to volunteer. You get to the point where you're probably mandating overtime in the summer if you have 12 closures throughout the summer months and everyone wants to, you know, show themselves on the weekends. We thought that was a reasonable thing given our limited resources. Also, the fact that some businesses might not like closures downtown. I think that was some of the mixed feedback we got when we did hear from businesses. I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything from the CLIC committee that I missed that we talked about? I was just looking for a general sense. If there are no objections, this could be our guideline going forward. It would be a policy, like an internal policy. It would be something that's a formal template. Judy's your opinion?
Yeah, I just had a question. I was wondering if you could elaborate on the expected amenities and accommodations as required by the city. Do we have a formal?
No, when we have a new event or a recurring event, we'll have a meeting with them, talk about what is their, so Sonoma Gang, they have tents. You know, what does that entail? Like, do they have the clear lane for emergency vehicles? Are they providing enough portable restrooms for the number of people they anticipate? If they have a bounce house, do they have their insurance for that? Do they have a generator to run that? Like, where is it going to be? Physical placement of things. So it really is kind of event dependent as to what exactly that is.
Okay. The only other thing that I was gonna say is that I like the guideline to have an event come back for approval the second year. I think that's great.
Dave? Just in regards to the positive impact on downtown businesses, I know we talked at length about this in our meeting. I think that one is really important. I think it's something though that needs to be discussed a lot more to try to narrow that down a little bit. And I think with the way it's written right now, it's just so wide open. I mean, we definitely want feedback from everybody. I mean, it says in here, not only from merchants, but customers, because on one hand, we don't want to have a negative impact on our merchants as much as possible with having these shutdowns. But I also know that if we have an event that brings in thousands of people, it's more likely that maybe some of these people will want to or consider even moving closer to the city because of events like that, which would then have a positive impact on the merchants throughout the rest of the year too. So I think we need to discuss that a little bit more. I don't think the survey is going to be as cut and dry as I originally thought. I think we can really go a little bit in depth with that.
Scott?
So, I just wanna, this weekend, when it was closed, I was amazed the amount of traffic we pushed out the south side. I mean, it was down Main Street from River Street. It was pretty much bumper to bumper for a while. It's because we closed it. So I was just sitting there thinking, of course, I'm not a business owner on Main Street, so I don't know, but if we're pushing that many vehicles out, we lost a lot of traffic downtown, which I don't know if that reverts back to that hurting their business. So I think this is a good plan to try to limit that. I think it's a great plan to try to limit burden on our staff, because we already know we're understaffed and we've been battling that. So, and I also agree with Dave on a couple things. Is it would be nice if we have some of these, maybe fewer closures, but bigger events to help draw people to our downtown, and maybe, give the presence that we don't try to hinder, but we try to, make it a company for everybody. So I want to say, I couldn't believe the amount of traffic that got pushed away from the city last weekend.
No further discussion on this?
So is this something as a committee we're gonna look at again?
Good question. Is this something that we need to, since it's a guideline, Greg, is this something that we need to finalize or codify amongst the council, or?
I suppose you could, I don't think we don't
I don't
have to.
remember us ever doing this
I would
before,
just take
but-
the document and share it as draft, take the draft off, and that would be, I'd issue that as a policy to staff, so we know how to approach things and when to bring them to the council, but we could.
I wasn't looking to formalize, I was just looking at, we talked about it in committee, we're talking about it again now, about the follow-up, right? The post-incident report aspect of this, so I just thought maybe our committee should look at that. Maybe a field trip, we'll go out and talk to the property owners.
Wait, you're talking about a follow-up after an event?
Right, you brought up, Scott brought up, Katie brought up, the positive impact on the downtown businesses. That seems to be the driving force of this guideline. Making sure we don't have a negative effect, that we have a positive effect on the downtown merchants and business owners. So to me, I would like to go back in the committee, even if it's at the end of the summer, and really feel out what happened with those 4 or 5 events that we have scheduled right now.
I think that's a good idea. I think what I'd like to have though, Len, I'd like to have a standardized something that's put together, so we're asking the same thing of everybody, whoever we talk to. Because inevitably, otherwise, you end up asking different questions and getting led down different roads with further questions, and if we have a standardized survey that we use, I think that would be helpful.
Right. Remember what Judy talked about, whether it was electronic or something tangible. I don't know if there's one right answer to that, but I think we need to do something probably on the way through the summer months so we don't lose data. because I don't remember what I had for dinner last Wednesday, so I'm not gonna remember how the event went this Saturday that, you know, Delina and we attended compared to the end of the summer.
I can talk to that a little bit from personal experience. Obviously, I've probably thrown more events on Main Street than anybody in the city. The secret is to connect with people. I think anybody that winds up being the promoter, producer of an event downtown should have that as part of their charge, that they are to connect with the business owners. It's not all that difficult. We have about 40 business owners, give or take. And it's with a survey that is agreed upon as being, these are the questions that need to be asked within the couple of days time frame to connect with these business owners and say, you know, how did that do for you? Because you're right, in a couple of weeks' time, they don't remember. There's an awful lot of stuff that happens and they're busy, and then you wind up conflating a couple of events with one another and you're not getting the good data. So I think it's something that somebody who's looking to produce an event in the city should probably take on as part of the expectation.
Well, we talked about that at the meeting. We also thought about, we don't want to disincentivize somebody to have an event downtown because Judy's not here. I'm looking over there like Judy's still here. We talked about getting that survey out to everybody and getting it back is so difficult, and then expecting somebody that's having the event to actually go to every single business afterwards, it's just so time consuming, and we're still trying to figure out what's the best way to do it.
It is, and again, speaking, you know, from personal experience, it's not to big a downtown, and it is actually a very smart thing for the event organizer to be connective to the businesses, and it only takes a few minutes of stopping in. So you might lose an hour and a half in the process of seeing everybody. Again, having done this, and then you're getting, you know, good information within a period of time, and you're also building relationships. Katie.
Yes. So what I'm hearing is that maybe Click is going to begin to formulate what that survey looks like so that it's standardized from organizer to organizer. Does that sound right?
We can talk about it. That wasn't what we originally come out of that last meeting, thinking that we were going to make the actual survey. Am I wrong, Greg?
We didn't really talk about that.
Okay.
Do we have a survey on file anywhere that we've used in the past?
We could talk with TL to start. I mean, obviously they did a survey just last year.
I mean, it'd be easier than recreating the wheel.
Sure.
So I mean, we could take that on and look at it.
I think the reason why I wanted to bring that up, something to consider. Obviously, we don't want to be doing anything that's detrimental to downtown businesses, but I think it's a big conversation because there are sometimes events that are, and Dave, you kind of had mentioned this, like good for the broader community and who we are as a community. So, for example, right, like Pride Fest may not be like a gangbuster day, but having that in our community, you know, do we think that that's important to like, represent our community and you know, so I just think there's more conversation around what having a positive impact means. And so maybe that conversation isn't finished yet. That was the end of my comment.
So we have something like a consensus that, as you've outlined this policy, that there's council consensus that this is the way we'll go. There seems to be a strategy that the Click most likely is going to wind up being the conduit through which further, more refined actions will take place, you know, sometime down the road. And I heard something like the end of the summer as being a date that was thrown out there, and so it may well be that that's a time frame that's going to work for the Click. I know how busy your agendas are crazy for the Click. So I think we have something that we're all generally agreed upon, we can move forward with, and then we can start to refine it, looking at surveys and the processes and expectations of folks, and that might take a couple of months, but I think that's okay. Does that sound right to everybody? Okay. All right, so we'll move on then to motion number 7, which is that the Common Council concurs with the mayor's recommendations and approves the following city resident as appointee to city boards and or commissions, and that is for the Airport Commission, Martine Kemper-Beek, with an expiration date of May 3rd, 2026. Do I have a motion to approve? Len?
Second.
Followed by Katie. Right to you. Is there any discussion? Dave?
I'm gonna ask the inevitable questions, 2 questions. Are they a city resident?
Yes, he lives in the 5th Ward.
Okay. And does he have airport experience or plane experience?
Yes, he was on our airport commission, but stepped off. Was a little frustrated, but he was also the organizer of probably the largest meeting that we've had up there, where we had pilot instructors come from, I believe it was Scary County, came down and gave a presentation. I think I shared the pictures with you guys. So Martine is, I think it's great to have him back, and I think he's essential to positive nature, so exciting.
Good. Katie?
Yeah, can I ask a silly question? Because I heard you emphasize this time in the motion, city residents. Does it say that every time, or is that new?
The
We have
last
one
couple
exception.
months.
Okay, nice. I like it, thank you. Because then we don't have to ask.
Oh, I didn't even see that, you're right.
Yes.
You're the first one to catch it.
Thank you for doing that.
All right, so if there's no further discussion, we'll take the vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarische?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Belleville? Aye.
And that brings us to item number 8, which is a discussion which we're gonna keep on our agenda, you know, maybe every single time we meet for a bit, on the parking garage. And with that, I'm gonna turn this over to you, Greg.
Sure, so the last time the first focus of our discussion was the upper level of the garage, and specifically the ramp between the upper level and the middle level going down. Whether to make those repairs or not. The question that was asked of Springbrook after the meeting, as directed by the council, was when will the arcade walkway improvements be made? What's their timeline on that? So they're telling us that midsummer, June, July is when that work will be done. That's about the time frame when I can't say how many weeks it will be closed completely and the gate open that go around by Miller Plaza. But at some point that walkway will be closed during the construction process. They're estimating the elevator will be operational and available in September, October this year.
Further discussion is,
I just wanna clarify for a second, Greg, you said they said the work would be done sometime in June or July?
That's when it will occur, yeah.
That's when it's gonna start? That's when it's happening?
And be
Okay.
mostly completed, I think,
The elevator, they said specifically, won't be operational until September, October, so.
any other questions? Any details that you need to have fleshed out for you, or any other conversation or discussion on this?
Well, we closed the walkway, I think, saw that go out, right?
The upper, pedestrian bridge from the upper level into the thing, someone had tried to get in that door and it was locked after hours when it was normally locked, and they broke the upper door. So we just locked the gate on the other end. There's no reason for anyone who, since there's no upper level to park on, to walk up the stairs and cross there. They can cross Water Street and then go to the lower level, the arcade, walk up the stairs to the inside and then go out to Main Street. So that's what we closed, the bridge.
Anything else?
Well, when we talked a couple of weeks ago, we had a number, I think it was up to $24,000 worth of repair. And city staff still feels comfortable with that number.
Yeah, we don't have an updated quote, that's true.
Yeah. And so you're looking for a motion or some kind of,
Well, the discussion, I think last time there was a motion discussed and then it was tabled. At that time, it was to proceed with the $1,400, which was just
we were also looking from where you were gonna pull that money from, no? The 24,000 didn't,
The 14, that wasn't a specific question.
oh, I thought we had asked that question, where that money was gonna come from.
It would probably come from general fund reserves or contingency. I haven't discussed that specifically with Ginny. Emily?
Yeah, I guess, so what I kind of want us to discuss then is, so if we did repair the upper level of the parking garage so we can have that parking again for even just part of the summer, if Springbrook will be done in the middle of July, and then, and we can have at the same time the parking garage, the upper level fixed enough so people can park there because it is used a lot. We do have a fellow business owner who can attest to that, and I think the general consensus downtown is if, we can have that parking, that, most people want it. Is it, do we want, as a council, to spend that money, and do we think that we could have a functional third level of a parking garage by the end of July and have it for August and September, and October, where we do get a lot of people still coming into O'Neill to, they utilize that parking.
And whereas we're still a year or two away from any type of construction.
Right. I mean, I personally think that it's worth it. It's not, go ahead.
A year or two ahead, away from doing construction, but we talked demo potentially next year, didn't we, Greg?
Potentially at the end of the year, right?
Yeah. So I just didn't want us to think that it was 2 years straight. It's. I feel like we need to make a decision. We're
Right.
kind of dragging our feet on this.
Yeah.
Right, and when you talk to property owners and businesses, Teresa's, because not just 'cause she's sitting here, but she's not alone.
Mhm.
When you actually spend some time downtown, they're all saying the same thing. Please fix whatever it is that's wrong so that potential clients can use the third floor, the third deck. So,
Well, I got thinking about this in a different way from the last meeting, is the residents haven't spoken yet, whether they
Mhm.
wanna spend this money for parking structure or not.
correct.
So I got thinking about this the other day, and I'm sitting there going, I need to change my tune a little bit and say, this might be the worthwhile investment, because we don't know how we're voting yet. We don't know how things are coming in front of us. We don't know how the residents if they wanna take on such a issue, a bonding act and stuff like that. So, I think that, I think we're gonna have to make the repairs to try to, do what we, not, cause we do have some unknowns out there right now.
Mm. And along those lines, I just would like to throw out there, what does the process look like if we went to a public referendum over this?
Over the parking garage.
Parking garage.
And bonding for that
Well,
money.
besides a public hearing, if we actually went to a vote, since we're looking at maybe construction sometime next year, we could this November have a public referendum of the parking garage, correct? I don't know,
It can't be, it isn't binding.
I'm sorry?
You can't have a binding referendum. You can't convey the legislative authority. You could put it on the ballot probably. I'd have to check that out as well. You can put it on the ballot as a recommendation.
Right.
Interesting.
But I don't think they can bind them, or they can bind you.
That's interesting.
But what would the choice be?
I can confirm it.
Yes
What
or
would
no?
the choice be? Spending $16 million to rent, what were the numbers?
It was almost $17 million to renovate it
Right,
And-
versus,
versus 6.6 to build the new one, plus the $1 million, basically $1 million to demo it.
yeah.
And I tried to bring that up 2 weeks ago, just to remind everybody that if you decide to do nothing, and you decide not to build the transit hub, not to demo the parking garage and building new, You'll be giving up grant money, millions of dollars worth of grant money that we've already been awarded. And also, you will still have the parking garage as it sits right now that is in desperate need of major repair. So either way, you're going to be taking out a bond. You just have to decide what is the best way to invest your bond. I've told you before that my recommendation is to demo it. In listening to all of the meetings I've been in with the different engineers, it's major, major repair, major money, and you will still have basically what sits there right now with no future development and, you know, possible changes or possible growth or possible development. So, and as, you know, Greg will be giving a presentation, you know, for all of you to consider, but I just don't want you to forget that you're still gonna have this major building or major structure that needs millions of dollars worth of repair.
Ginny, am I correct that, let's say if we decided to not demo, not build a new hub, and we lose all that grant funding, millions of dollars of grant funding, is it true that down the road, if we're looking for if we have big needy projects and we go to the state and ask them for money, is it more likely they're gonna say no?
Yes, one of the reasons we actually was awarded the DRI funding in the first place is because the city's got such a record of completing their grants. And when you when you fail and we have to return the grant money back, it goes back against your grading the next time an application comes in.
I can say for certain that one of the reasons, a factor in us not getting the Lettuce Highway, Route 2328 sidewalk and bicycle improvements the first time we applied was because we had returned a grant, not done the project for Newell Park entryway at James Georgeson Ave. That was the 2014 or 13 grant that we never followed through on. That was mentioned, you know, that was that funding agency, same funding agency, DOT. But it does have an effect, not permanently, but, you know.
And I'll just jump in real quickly too, just, you know, you're only as good as the last thing you did. If your partnership is suspect, your potential for partnerships is absolutely at risk. And I'm out there, as you guys heard me as I was delivering that report, I am asking a lot of different people in a lot of different places to support us, to grant us, you know, kind of a different status than some other communities. We want to, I tell folks, we want to be your poster child for your housing vision. We want to be this, we want to be that. And all of this winds up having an impact on the likelihood of somebody taking me seriously and the city of Oneonta seriously in those sorts of conversations. So it's just something else to just kind of be considering of. Yes, Luke.
For what it's worth, I think that long-term, we really need to keep that in mind. Our standing with the state, our standing, our ability to get projects. Jane, thank you for reminding us we're going to be taking out a massive amount of money either way. Thinking long-term, we have to remember that if we want to grow, we're going to be in a position where we are going to be asking the state for help. And I don't think it wise to put us in a position where we're not going to be able to ask, or it's less likely that we'll receive the help that we're asking.
Along those lines, Luke, is I think every grant that we look at, I think we have to take a big look, even as a council, as they come in front of us and be like, is this something we can afford to take on because of the future? Grants are kind of a double-edged sword. It's great to get it, but then all of a sudden, we got to find a way to follow through with it, and it is difficult. I mean, even when I was on the county board, we actually had to slow down how many grants we started taking for a while because we were getting awarded them, but then to follow through, even some of the grants where you weren't supposed to have to invest, you find out that something jumps up somewhere down the road where you have to invest to make it worthwhile to do. So, you know, just a little bit of caution when it comes to grants and what we're putting in for and stuff. And Greg, I know you think about this. I'm just probably preaching to the choir here. I know you think about it, but just remind us too when it comes to grants is, you know, it's okay to put a break on and say to the, yeah, maybe this one we shouldn't put in for this time, you know. So, but I mean, when you look at the parking garage, like I said, I just was throwing it out there. I don't know, you know, I'm holding a ward meeting, tomorrow night, and they wanna talk about the parking garage, as part of it, so I don't know what the feeling is until after that meeting and where they stand with, you know, cause they're worried about finances, so.
So, before I go, so I just want to go back to, as following your question, comment, Dave, the question that Emily brought up, which if the council was to arrive at some consensus would probably would be forward movement, one way or the other, relative to the third level of the parking garage. It's a question that's not really been answered, and I think, you know, as you guys are discussing this, that maybe should stay somewhat as a focus. Go ahead, Dave.
I agree on that completely. I was just gonna point out that, I think we've done a really good job with grants and grant writing in the city over the last 10 years probably. Where we're identifying projects, looking for grants, projects that have to get done and we need to look for the grant, versus seeing a grant and then looking for a project that would fit. We've been very successful the other way around, so.
I can't speak highly enough of Judy and her staff and Steve Yearling. They have done a remarkable job.
Just give me
Grant monies in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Scott, 100%. My point is that I think we've done a really good job with that as a council.
I just don't like that the personal tone comes back, like, just because of my comment is, oh, the staff does a good job, I can't speak. I never put our staff down.
I'm not saying that you
Our
did.
staff is great.
Yeah.
Okay, but, I mean, sometimes less is more in a comment.
Yeah, Scott, I don't think that there was anything personal in the response there, and I think we all understood what you were saying, and I think we, you know, we can agree to disagree on some things. So let's get back though to the main point of the conversation, if we could. I think it'd be great if we had a sense of the council in terms of, you know, a short-term, you know, strategy, if there is one. I know that, I'm not certain that there is one. There is a sense being built of what we may be looking at in terms of the ramps, potential cost for repair. That's really the key, right? And we have a number right now. Can you speak, Greg, a little bit more to what we may be looking at and what we may know and what we don't know?
We don't know anything more than we knew last time. That's where the answer was Glenn quoted. That was the engineer's estimate. I think if the direction were to go forward with that option or whatever option, we would move ahead with, you know, getting actual contractor on board and doing the project for what it costs.
Can you just remind us what that number was? I think it was like 16,000.
24,000.
Yeah, 23.
Some,
I mean, personally, I think, you know, like, in order to have it functional while it's there, it would be good for our downtown to have it functional while it's there.
Absolutely.
You know, and for our businesses downtown, I think, and I think it would alleviate maybe some of the tension involving the parking garage project as well. I'm also, you know, being on the parking committee, I will say that there's a lot of, really good thought going into this project and a lot of like really wonderful community involvement. And I really think that there's going to be, you know, I'm really confident that there will be a successful plan to invest in our infrastructure downtown and to make this a really positive thing for going on.
So getting to that number, the 24,000-ish number, what level of confidence do we have that that would be the total number that we'd be looking at in order to maintain for those months a safe access of the third floor by vehicles?
I'm pretty confident that the ramp would be addressed. Now, we have not done another detailed engineering structural analysis of the rest of the structure. You know, something else might come up. This is a continually deteriorating structure.
Sure.
I cannot guarantee with any certainty that there won't be other issues that we have to address.
Right. But relative
elsewhere.
to the ramp, we feel
We've
like that
looked back closely, our
$24,000.
structural engineers looked at that closely, and I think that this estimate, of course, the contractor, pricing comes back a little different than back in the year.
So I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the repair in the amount of up to $24,000 to secure the structure and.
Raising your hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you have something to say? Well, there will be discussion. Keep the third level open.
I'll second
Discussion?
Yeah, I was gonna mention, try to listen to everybody, I think you all know I've been back and forth on this. I think we need to keep in mind some things, if we put together all the information we received from the last two meetings. One, we're talking about 6 weeks minimally from this point on of being able to open that up, so that's minimally June 15th. We're talking about a June, July shutdown of the bridge because of the fact that the Springbrook project will be undergoing, and maybe September, October. So we're looking at the entire summer may be lost to this. If we were to put the repairs in, we're gonna be sitting with a ramp that works, but we can't access it. We won't have folks up there because they can't access the main street via the bridge. So that's all the way to October. Then we also talked about the last meeting, about the winter challenge of the winter load up there and not parking cars there. So we're looking at maybe October, November, December, having that parking garage, third floor accessible. That to me has been what has pushed me away from being conflicted and feeling initially, and I was pretty upfront about it, that we should invest in it, especially when we were looking at, I think it was $8,000 initially. To now I question the logic of spending, $25,000 or $24,000 for what might be only October, November, December, especially if we need to have the winter time closed.
I believe based on what Greg had said is that it would just be mid-June to July when when the arcade would be closed.
I thought that was the start date.
That's when it would be closed. So we would have August, we'd have September, we'd have October, we would have those months where that would be open. The elevator might not be functioning, but it will still be open.
Greg, can you clarify anything?
That's correct, although I have to just give the caveat that they gave me a loose time frame, June, July. I mean, obviously it could change.
In June, July was for the project
For the
itself.
construction, interior construction of the walkway area, where I don't know if that entire 2-month period it will be closed, or if it would be just a portion of that. But I did get the sense that the elevator would be finished later on. There would be a period of time when there would be construction happening in there that there might be access. So I think it would be what Emily is saying, about 2 months.
2 months it could be open, say August and September.
Yeah, I think after the construction, if they do June and July interior, after that would be open again. There probably would be a temporary closure when they do the elevator.
Which is in September, October.
It's hard to get 4 or 5 months until snow.
In the winter, in fairness, we closed the garage when it snows this year, but it was reopened again, every time it snows. So it's not close to the winter edge, and it might be closed and reopened, depending on how the weather goes.
Right. Just further discussion? You got that motion, we'll take the vote.
Mayor, I think we don't.
Yes. Sorry. Oh,
Am I, I just want to remind, and I reminded everybody this last time, so I just want to remind everybody that we invested $18,000 into the ramp last year for a similar repair, and now it's broken next to it. So I just want everybody to realize that if we do the 18,000 plus the 25, we're gonna have almost $50,000 invested into just repairing that ramp to keep it safe. That's all I wanted to share with you. And I'm not sure, Greg, do you know what, if we do go ahead for the repair, when the contractor will be available?
No, I mean, that's the estimate, 6 weeks or so before we get material, so I can't.
possible to, like, put forward that we want to at least, like, that we would like to do this, and then based on the timeline that the contractor gives us, kind of, if he says, like, I can't do this until September, I don't know, right? Then it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe we don't want to spend that money then. Is it possible to back if that, if the timeline is changed, or,
I thought Chris said that
you know?
we could get that contractor relatively quick, if we just had to make a decision, which I was going back through my notes, we've been at this a couple of months now.
Yeah.
More materials than getting it done.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
so, the contractor a couple of months ago was ready to go
Yeah.
relatively soon, right? It was just a matter of the lead time of them to steel,
Yeah, that was months ago.
yeah, so.
So we have a motion on the floor, we are in a discussion. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
I just think about the accessibility of the third floor and how even I'm an able-bodied person, and when I go to, what's it called? Where like B-side is, I'll park in the middle, but if I'm gonna go to Main Street, I always park on the third level and go across and just know that, for people who have a hard time getting around, it's just so much more of a straight shot. Which brings up its own considerations when we talk about not having a third floor at all, but for now.
Oh, also, I think a lot of business owners use it too when they're loading things into their businesses, they, use the third floor. I feel like it's there, and it's, I feel like if it's there, we can just put a little bit more money into it, like get through this last stretch, and it would really help our business owners downtown to keep it.
Well, can I ask a silly question? I'm sorry.
There's no silly question.
Thank you, Emily. I know that this is a question that has a lot of context behind it because we were presented with a basically impossible proposal with regard to rehabbing the structure. But if we were to rehab the structure, would this be considered part of that work? Do you know what I mean? Like, we're reinforcing the ramp, so is it something that's going after, and it's a drop in the bucket, but could it be considered part of that work if we were to go that route?
I can't say for sure, because we haven't done the detailed design for that, so I don't know if they would be recommending replacing the entire ramp or just pieces of it. Something like this, I can't say for sure.
Scott?
Greg, how quick can that door be fixed, or has it already been fixed?
The door that's broken, you replace.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's just curious.
Because the other thing is too, is I know up at work, the lead time on doors are absolutely horrible to try to get doors, so.
Which door are you referring to?
The one that, I believe it's the one right by the arcade, it was broke, right?
With the upper level, when you're at the East Bridge.
Okay.
So that needs to be replaced.
Kate, would you, or whoever's taking it, would you mind reading the motion that I lost track, I apologize.
Sure. Do you want me to? I'm reading it from the minutes. I just changed my.
You're fine.
Okay. That we authorize the repair of the ramp up to the amount of $24,000 to secure the structure and reopen the third level.
Thank you.
Sure.
Further discussion? All right.
Councilmember Murphy?
No.
Councilmember Davies?
No.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?